Welcome back to Make It Mondays, and this week I am working on a new commission, and it's going to be one of these little guys, but done up as a witch. So they're going to have a dress on and either a traditional witch hat or a mushroom hat, depending on how far I get before I need to make that decision and what yarn I happen to be able to find at the time. The witch is not going to be wearing the traditional black. She will be wearing purple. And I know this looks very dark on camera, but it is in fact a very dark eggplant purple. So let me get everything flipped around and I'll show you how it all gets started. So first things first, I am doing the legs out of black, and then I'm going to be doing the dress, so therefore body out of purple, and then her face is going to be pink. But let's get started on the legs. So this is a magic loop cast on, so I do hold the yarn between my thumb and my middle finger, wrapping around my middle finger and my index. Then pull my middle finger out, insert hook, lift up a loop, and then draw through another loop. I'm more comfortable doing this with a crochet hook, though it is possible to do it with knitting needles. You just have to use a slightly different method to lock those loops into place, but the idea is the same. So I'm going to get to 6, grab a couple of knitting needles, slip 3 off onto one knitting needle, slip the last 3 off onto the second needle, and then pull that magic loop closed. Then knit into every stitch. So stab it, strangle it, scoop out its guts, throw it off a cliff. And it's that all the way around. Now, as a reminder, I do knit relatively quickly, but I've also been knitting for roughly 30 years. So, second round, knit 1, make 1. In my case, the make 1 is a lifted increase. And that, again, is all the way around. So instead of 6 stitches, there will be 12. And I know on black yarn, it's much harder to see what's going on. And pull one up. Okay. And then it's just going to be knitting all the way around over and over and over again until it is the right length, cutting the yarn from this leg and moving on to the second leg. So I will be back when it's time to start on their bodies. So right there is where it gets started. So I'll be back in just a little bit. So I'm using a provisional cast on to start the bottom of the friend. So this is a crochet chain. That's the pretty side. And then the side with the bumps is where we pick up the yarn for the friend. Leaving a nice long tail, because later on their bottom is sewn together with the Kitchener stitch. So insert through the bump and pull up a loop. Through the bump and pull up a loop. This was one of the ways that I found to do starting critters that weren't perfectly round. So we didn't want them to be perfect balls or circles. And since the Worry Friends, which is what this is modified on, is a oval. This is just how this one works. 6, 8, 9, 10. And again, part of how this looks so easy for me is because I have been doing it for quite a while. So if it's not as easy the first couple times for you, that is perfectly fine, and that is perfectly normal. So now I'm switching, or I'm taking some of the stitches to a second needle and pulling the working yarn up in between the two. I leave the starting tail on the bottom just so that I don't mistakenly knit with it. So it's going to be knit all the way around. And I do leave it on 2 needles for the moment. It doesn't stay that way for very long, but I do find it easier for this first row to stay just on the 2 needles. And I've done other variations of these friends on this channel with different levels of explanations of what I'm doing. So Santa last year, so 2024, and I believe I did the original Worry Friends when they were brand new as well. Okay, so I'm going to be picking up in that bottom stitch and pulling up a loop, knitting into the top stitch, again picking up and knitting into the bottom stitch and knitting into the top stitch. And that is the right leaning increases. And this is also where I add the needles. So knitting 2 and knitting into the bottom stitch, and that's the left leaning decrease. And then repeating the whole situation on what is actually eventually going to be the back. Or sorry, this side is eventually the front. The other side is the back. Because the start of round moves to in between these 2 needles pretty soon. This last stitch is being a little stubborn. That is one of the downsides of black yarn, is sometimes it's just a little harder to see. Then I'll be knit around, do another round of increases, and then adding the legs. So I'll be right back. So I'm ready to add the legs. So the 2 needles get lined up right next to each other. So it's the bottom of the leg and the body. Inserting the needle through both and knitting 2 together. That way I don't have to sew the legs on later, and they are nice and secure. It also means that if I want to weave the ends in on the inside, I can. Typically don't, but it is a possibility. Going all the way, and then there's 1 extra stitch. Then same thing for the second leg, doing that 1 extra stitch in the middle. That's not through 2. Squishing the needle down now to work all the way across. Okay. So after this, it is actually time to make the skirt, which also means it's time to cut the black yarn. So I'm going to work all the way around, or I'm going to work to this point, which is the center back, which is going to be the... Actually, I goofed. I do have to do this one more round, stuffing the legs, and then I can work around, cut the yarn, and then start on the skirt. So I will be back in a little bit to show how the skirt is worked. So here's the cast on for the skirt, and I'm going to do one purl around, so it's got a little bit of a texture. So inserting, wrapping around, and pulling through. And then I'm going to be decreasing, doing a knit two together every other round, and 6 times per round to give the skirt its shape. So that's what's going to happen off camera for a little bit. And I'm going to attach it to the body. And then the arms are made the exact same way as the legs. So I'll actually be back around the time that it is time to look at the head. So be back in a bit. So here is the little body of my witchy friend. And it's time to get their head on. So this is the bottom of their head. I'm going to, just like the legs, put the 2 stitches on top of each other and knit through with the purple on top. So whatever color I want to continue with being on top. Okay. But before we get it all the way closed, need to stuff the little friend. All the stuffing just goes right in there. And I do a little bit of stuffing at a time. I try not to fluff it out too far, and I try not to squish it down too much before it goes in whatever I'm stuffing, just so that they stay a little squishable and they don't compress too much later. Okay. That looks pretty good, nice and squishy. Then get everything rearranged again to finish up attaching the head. Now, it would be possible to go straight from the body to the head without having this intermediate disc of knitting. Thing is, I've tried that, and because we're doing a decrease couple rounds to an increase couple rounds, the knitting doesn't want to stay tucked in at what should be the divot point. So this way there is something on the inside holding the neck closed. And it also prevents the stuffing from going between sections. So keep going all the way around. And then it's going to be some increased rounds and knitting straight for a while for the face. And I've shown how to add the eyes on multiple videos, so you can go look that up on other videos. So I will be back when it's time to duplicate the step that I did for the skirt for the witch's hat. So be back in just a minute. So here we are at this connection of the hat. So I'm going to do the same thing I did for the legs and the skirt. So just knitting through both Now, after this, I'm actually going to be cutting the purple yarn and doing the same thing I did for the start of the head, and making an additional disc to go in the middle. This one will be a bit bigger just because of where it is, but that way the head doesn't turn into more of a cylinder rather than a hat. So that's what the next couple steps are. And then the hat itself is just going to be decreases, 4 decreases around. So I'm going to have to adjust the needles a little bit to make that a bit easier to follow and to do. But that's going to be it. So I'll be back when our little witch friend is all the way done. And here is our finished little witchy friend. So she's going to go off to a very special person. And if you've made it this far, we would like you to hit like, subscribe, and hit the notification bell if you want to know when the videos are going to be live. And I will see you next time on Make It Mondays. Bye.